Adobe XD is a UI/UX design tool created by Adobe. You can design, prototype, share and collaborate all within one app. You don't need to change the apps, you don't need to install separate things on your machine. You can do it all inside of one app. It's great because it's free to get started, and you can get started simply by downloading and installing Adobe XD on your machine. I'm going to show you that in the next section, but basically what you can do in this tool, if you check right here and start scrolling down, you can see it's for design. So you can create mobile app design, you can create website design, dashboard design, whatever kind of UI UX design you want. You can even create style guides, and you can see you can prototype, include different interactions, include different animations. You can share with clients, with developers, with your teammates, all with Adobe XD. And you can click start here for free to download and install Adobe XD, and that's what we're going to talk about next. Adobe XD works on both Mac and PC, and it's quite simple to get started. On their website, as I showed you, you can simply click start for free. It will start the download on your machine and it will automatically install it. After it's completed that and after it's done, you're going to get this, which is Creative Cloud Desktop app, and this app is basically used for all of the updates that are regularly launched on Adobe XD, and you can expect updates every single month, smaller updates, sometimes even bigger, but usually every single year in October or November, when it's the time for Adobe Max event, then you can usually expect bigger update from Adobe XD. But every single month they are fixing bug issues, they are adding new features, they are changing things, and you can always go to their user voice on their website and suggest a new feature you would like them to include in a future release of Adobe XD. So how it all works, as you can see right here in your Creative Cloud Desktop app, and this app works on both Mac and PC, and as I said, it's used for updates to your Adobe XD or any other tool for from Adobe's family. So you can see right here XD is up to date, where it says update available. You can simply click there and it will update to the latest version. If you uninstall it for some reason and you want to install it again, simply search for it right here and you're going to see it right here. It says install, and where it says install next to Adobe XD, simply click right there and it will install it on your machine. One more thing to note is differences between Mac and PC, and we're going to talk about that in the next section of this course. But before we move on to that, I just want to quickly show you this, which is basically all the apps they have, and you can see under this it says all apps or updates. Currently I have 5 updates to the software I'm not even using anymore. Categories, so you can divide by category, and you can see under UI and UX, you can click right there, and the first thing it launches is Adobe XD. It also launches Photoshop, Illustrator and After Effects, which are all the tools that UI UX designers are using, but in this short course we're going to focus strictly on Adobe XD and all of its main features and benefits. In the next section and in the next video, I'm going to explain Mac versus Windows and what is the difference, so I'll see you there. So as I said, Adobe XD works fine on both Mac and PC, and the crucial difference between those two OSs is how they look. So basically on Windows you have this hamburger menu in the top left, and because I'm working on Windows I'm going to show you that in just a second, but on a Mac you have multiple of these options simply dotted around on the top part of your screen, and that's really the crucial difference between Mac and the PC. And one more difference is recording of prototypes, because Adobe XD has this function where you can record your prototypes and you can share them as a video either to your clients, or you can share them on social media just to create a bigger influence around yourself. Basically the crucial difference between Mac and PC is in the Mac you have this native option where you can just click record and it's going to record, and you can click stop and that's basically the end of it, while on the Windows you have to use their game recording function, and you can access it by hitting Windows key and the G key, and then you can start your recording that way. I'm also going to show you that a bit later in this course. And finally, what I want to mention quickly is if you have Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows Vista, Adobe XD will not work on your machine, you need to have Adobe XD installed on your Windows 10 machine. Preferably, if you can install it on the creator update of your Windows machine, then it will work flawlessly, but it's not supported by older versions of Windows such as 7, 8 or even Vista. So that's what you need to know. When you open up your Adobe XD, you are taken to the welcome screen, and I'm going to show you what welcome screen is and how it changes over time. So here is the welcome screen, and you can see you are on the home screen here. You can click learn and you can access some tutorials from Adobe XD team. You can also click right here to learn about their new features and learn about some techniques from their team. Harpinski launches usually every single week new tutorials about Adobe XD, and it's great. If you want, you can follow him on Behance as well for these live streams about Adobe XD. Basically, that's what Learn tab is. Cloud documents, because XD is cloud based usually, but you can also save local documents to your machine if you want to. Cloud documents are all of your documents which are inside of the cloud, so you can simply click right here to access them. Shared with you are the documents which are shared with you by the clients or by your teammates. Deleted are all the files you have previously deleted, because remember, you have limited space on the free version of Adobe XD and you just have one single prototype which you can share with your clients or stakeholders. In order to have multiple prototypes at the same time available to you, you need to upgrade to the paid plan, and that's why I'm showing this to you on a free plan. You can see I'm on a free plan because it says upgrade and it says starter plan. But I wanted to show you that you can do all of these things within the starter plan, especially if you get started. So you don't need to pay for premium versions right from the start. You can test out this tool, you can see if it's right for you, if the UI UX is right for you, and then if it is, you can then proceed and pay for this tool. So moving down the line, we have manage links. So basically these are the links which you have shared with your clients or stakeholders, and on your computer you can locate the files on your computer. Here you can see it says design prototype share, because that's what Adobe XD does and that's what it is. And below that we have some artboards which you can create from here. These are pre-created artboards, and you can see for mobile we have iPhone sizes, we have Google Pixel, iPad, Nexus, and so on. Then for the web, you can see we have 1920 by 1080, and if I click right here, you can see that they are giving you these pre-composed options if you want to use them. Then we have social media sizes, so you can see we have Instagram story, post, Twitter post, header, Facebook cover, and finally YouTube video. And finally we have custom size, so you can use this custom size for any size you want. You can enter pixel value right here and you can simply click on it, and then it will open as a new document and with that artboard size inside. So as I said, you can use any of these, or you can simply enter a custom value right here. And finally here we have recent documents, so these are just the documents that you opened, and you can click right here in order to access some of the more recent articles from their blog and help posts and so on, as I explained. One thing to note is this welcome screen is going to change over time, so just make sure to understand that if you're watching this video or this course in the future and you're checking this out and it doesn't look the same as yours, make sure to understand they're updating it all the time, but these are just the basic features and tools that you can expect here on the welcome screen. So to get started, I'm just going to choose one artboard size, so perhaps 1920 by 1080, and I'm going to enter it here just to show you how this looks like. So 1080, you can click enter or you can click right here in order to open it, and this is how it looks like once it's opened. Let me enlarge it a little bit. And we're now going to move on to Adobe XD's tools and features and what you can expect. The beauty of Adobe XD is it has really simple to use interface. So I'm on a Windows version, as I said, and this is the key difference between Windows and Mac, because on Windows you have this hamburger menu and you can access all of your tools from here, and you can also right click on any part of your document to access some additional features like these. You can right click right here, and then you have sub menus that you can enter and use some of the features, while on Mac you're going to have all of these options right here at the top and below that. So that's really the crucial difference between XD on a Mac and XD on a PC. So when it comes to interface, you can see it's divided into 3 parts. Right here you have your tools, so you have your select tool to select multiple things, you have your shapes right here, then you have a pen tool, text tool, artboard tool, and finally zoom tool. And below here we have libraries, we have layers, we have plugins. Right here on the top we have design, prototype, share, because those are the things which XD is famous by, and you can simply switch between these 3 tabs in order to access different functionalities of Adobe XD. Finally, we have this panel right here on the right, and depending on what you are doing on your artboard, depending on what is selected, this right panel is always changing. It always has some features inside for all of the things that you are doing, for example, positioning and so on, but it keeps changing depending on what you have selected, whether that's design, prototype, share, whether that you are working something right here on your artboard. So let's now move on to shapes, and I will explain what kind of shapes you have in Adobe XD and what you can do with them. Let's get started with the shapes, and shapes are located right here, and you can see you have rectangle, you have ellipse, you have polygon, and finally you have your line tool, and finally you can create custom shapes using pen tool, but I will dedicate a bit more time for the pen tool itself. So to use any shape from here, all you need to do is simply click on it to select it, then simply draw on your artboard, and as soon as you do that you have some values right here. So let's go one by one and I will show you what all of those values are for each of these shapes. So first things first, let's quickly draw these shapes so that I can show you how all of them look like. So like this, and I'm simply using V on my keyboard to use this select tool in order to position it. And finally, let's go ahead and create a shape with our pen tool. And let me quickly show you differences. So you can see right here in your layers panel, which you can hide by simply clicking right here, we have rectangle, which is this one, ellipse, polygon, line, and finally path, because we use the pen tool to create this custom path. Now what you can do with all of your shapes is, if you select a shape, you can see all of these tools available to you right here. So here we have positioning tools, so you can position it to any part of the artboard you want. We have a repeat grid, and I will explain repeat grid a bit later in more detail and what you can do with it. Then we have merging tools and Boolean operations. So basically you can select 2 or more of these tools, and you can add, subtract, intersect, and finally exclude overlap. And I really encourage you, if you don't know what all of these things are, to select 2 or more shapes and play around with them and see what you can do. But basically you can combine them into a single shape, or you can add some multiple properties to it, like for example excluded, outline, and more. If we move on down, then we have transform, and you can change your width, you can change your height, positioning on X and Y axis. You have your rotation, so if I enter 45 degrees, for example, you can see it rotated, but you can also hover right here, hold the shift key, for example, and it will rotate in increments, or you can hit Ctrl Z to go back. Next, we have flipping, so flip horizontal, flip vertical. Below that, we have a horizontal scroll, and I will explain that a bit later what it is. We have vertical scroll, and we have scrolling in all positions. Finally, we have fixed position when scrolling. So when you're creating website designs or app designs, you want some elements to be fixed in place once users start scrolling. So this is what that's used for, and I will show you that in a later example as well. Below that, as I said, we have responsive resize, and I'm going to show you a bit more about responsive resize later as well. Below that, we have opacity, so you can change the opacity of your object by simply using this slider, or you can use keyboard shortcuts. So 1 is for 10%, 4 is for 40%, for example, 8 is for 80%, and 0 is for 100%. Below that, you have blend modes, and you have multiple blend modes, basically the same as in Photoshop or Illustrator. So if you ever used Photoshop, I really encourage you to test out these blend modes, because they work almost the same as in Photoshop, but they don't have nearly as many functions as in Photoshop, obviously, because in XD it is just streamlined for UI and UX work. Below that, we have corner radius. So At the moment it's 0, but if you want to round the corners, you can use these dots and simply click and drag, and it will round the corners. And you can see as I'm doing this, values here are changing. Or you can simply manually enter, for example, 20 for the corner radius, and it will round your corners to that value. You can also round the corners of each of your corners. So for example, I will hit 0, and you can see top left is 0 right here. And you can do that for all, or you can simply click right here, enter 20, and it will round on all corners. Next up comes the fill color. You can click right there and you can change the fill color. You can enter the hex code right here. So for example, 3EC6FF for a nice blue. And you have your border values right here. But before we move on to borders, you can change from color spectrum right here. You can change how light or dark your color is going to be. You can change the opacity of your color. You can add a hex code, or you can simply click right here to save the color as a swatch, so you can use it later by simply clicking on it, and it will apply to whatever object is selected or in your artboard. Next, if you click right here, it's going to open linear gradient or radial gradient, and basically you have these three options. So at the moment it's the solid color. If I click right here, you can see we have linear gradient, and you can add as many stops as you want. You can simply click right here. Then you can rotate your gradient to go from one side to another. And finally, for each of these stops, you can add a different color, or you can add a different shade of your color. You can also click and reduce its opacity like so for each and individual color. But radial gradient basically works exactly the same, but it's in circle. But I'm just going to use solid color for this example to keep things nice and simple. Below that we have border, and if I click right here, you can see the border is disappearing. And if I increase the size, so for example 10, you can see now it's increased. You can also click right here to change the color of your border. Same story, opacity, hex code. You can also add it as a swatch, or you can click right here to sample a color for whatever you want. And let me quickly sample this blue color as my border. But let's go back to here and let me explain all of these. So we have stroke width, which is basically what you are seeing right here. Then we have the dash, and if I set, I don't know, 50 for example, you can see that it's divided into these dashes, and gap is also 50. But if I increase the gap to 100, you can see now the gap is much bigger between these dashes. You can always go down to 0 and down to 0 and see how that looks like. And right here we have some different stroke options. So inner stroke, outer stroke, center stroke, and I really encourage you to test it out and to try for yourself for all of these different options and to see what they are doing. Next, we have butt cap, round cap, and projecting cap, and this is really useful if you want to have rounded edges on your lines, for example. Next, we have miter join, rounded join, and bevel join, and this is basically how the corners are going to look like. Finally, we have the shadow. So this is the background shadow of your shape itself. So let's enter, for example, something really huge. So 20, 20, and 20. So this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis, and this is how much blur you want to use for your shadow. So if I, for example, increase this, you can see that it goes down on y-axis. If I increase it to here, you can see it goes right on the x-axis. And if I increase it to here, you can see that the blur value is increasing massively as I go up in size, and you can only go to 100. So that's basically how the shadow looks like. And you can also, same for the color and the border, you can change its color. You can go from color spectrum, you can enter hex code, you can use color swatch, and you can always lower it down in opacity from here. Finally, we have the background blur, and background blur option is really useful, but you need to have 2 or more elements in order for this to work. So let me switch this up a little bit. So I moved the rectangle above ellipse just so that I can show you how this looks like. So if I lower down my amount, lower down my brightness, you can just start to see the circle behind our rectangle, and you can see how that looks like. So I can lower my amount or increase it. I can increase or decrease my brightness, and I can increase or decrease my opacity depending on what I want to do. So basically that's how this works, and that's how this looks like. If you want, you can use background blur for all sorts of things inside of Adobe XD, especially useful for images if you want blurred backgrounds. If you want to use something like glass morphism in your design, then you can use this option with the background blur. Finally, we have mark for export right here, and this is really useful if you want to quickly export all of your files which are marked for export. You can simply click right there to check it out, or you can always go right here and says mark for export, and then you can quickly export all of your files which are marked for export later for designers, developers, or clients. So if we move on down, basically you can see that for all of these we have some of these options. Some of them are the same, some of them are a bit different. And finally for this one, I wanted to show you because this is the Polygon tool, which is this tool right here. And you can share how many corners you want. So currently it's at 3, so it's a triangle. But if I change it to 5, you can see how that looks like. If I change it to 8, it looks like that. You can also increase or decrease the size of your shapes by simply holding your shift key and clicking in one of the corners to increase or decrease the size of your shape. As we explained, you can change how big the border is going to be. And finally, we have corner radius here like this. So let's go with 20. And you can see that all of the corners for each of these corners is going to be rounded no matter which value I enter right here. Finally, we have the star ratio, and I don't know, let's say for example 50, and you can see that it creates these different stars. So if I enter, let's say 10, you can see it kind of a cog, or 70. So it creates these different sort of shapes right here. But if I go to 100, it's going to go back to our original shape. What you can also do right here is hold like this and then like this. So greater than and then number 3, press enter, and it's going to create a heart, which is a simple hack that Adobe XD team created just to make your life easier when you start creating these icons. So basically we have the same options as we always did. So now you can create, you can edit the fill color, you can edit the border color, and you can always go back to where you were previously. So you can create all of these different options. So for example, let me create 3, and I can go to my fill color to something like this. You can add your background shadow, background blur, and all of these options which we explained. Finally, let me quickly cover this pen tool part, and I'm going to go back to it in just a second and explain the pen tool. So what you can do with it is exactly the same for all of these shapes, but this is just a custom shape that you created using pen tool. And we are going to move on, and I'm going to explain what pen tool is now, and I'm going to show you how you can edit complex shapes and how you can create complex shapes using pen tool. So as I said, you can use pen tool to create all sorts of shapes, but usually you're using pen tool to create these more complex shapes like this one is, which I created. But let's go once again. So you can click on your pen tool and you can click wherever you want, and you have these anchor points. And once you're done completing your shape, you can click on the anchor point and you can move it wherever you want. So let's say that I want to move this one right here, and if you double click on it, it will become this arc, and then you can change how you want this arc to be positioned. And you can also hold shift to go down in these increments if you want. So it will keep the angle of your anchor point to whichever angle you want. So for example, 45, 70, 90, 180, and so on. So you can do that for all of these. Simply double click, or if you change your mind at any point, you can simply double click back and it will revert back to a straight path. What you can also do, we explained this in the previous section, you can change the fill color, border color, but let's go back and I will show you how these look like. So I will zoom in really closely and I will click on my shape like this. So let's go to the round cap. And you don't see this at the moment, but for example, if I click right here, then here and here, then hit escape just to create this line. And let me select it once again. If I zoom in really closely, now you can see this is how the butt cap looks like. So basically it's really flat. this is how projecting cap looks like. So it's really flat, but it sort of extends where your point is. In the butt cap, it's right in the center, but here in the projecting cap, it's right here. So that's the difference where your end point is. While with the round cap, you can see it rounds your cap and it rounds your line and your shape, so you can really play around with it that way. Basically, if you click here and click round cap, you can be sure that every single one of these anchor points contains that round cap. So if you, for example, want to delete one of these, like for example this one, you can see that it contains that round cap and it's still inside of that shape. So as I said, you can play around with all of these different settings, and you can click and you can move all of these anchor points. And let's go with a fill color, and let's quickly add a fill color. Let's add a different border. Let's give it 10 so you can see what's going on. And you can also click wherever you want to add new anchor points. You can extend them, double click and change and create basically different shapes. If you want to draw using Adobe XD, you can put your sketch inside of Adobe XD. Then let's imagine that this is the shape that you are creating. You can position it over your sketch like this, for example. Then you can lower down the opacity, and then you can simply click on your shape and you can then adjust all of these later, which is extremely useful if you're working as a UI/UX designer. If you're creating icons, for example, and you're using pen and paper to sketch these different icons, then you can use Adobe XD to adjust all of these, and you can adjust the border thickness to 20 or to 2 or whatever you want. And basically this is how the pen tool works and how it looks like in Adobe XD. When it comes to entering your text and using text in Adobe XD, you have some great features, but it's not as advanced as something like Illustrator or InDesign, which is used for print. So let's check it out. You have your text options right here. You can also hit T on your keyboard. So let me type in some random text, something like this, just so that we have some text on the page and so that I can explain what everything is. So let's say that we have completed that. And if I select it, you can see that we have these options right here. So once again, same for the shapes, we have these positioning options at the top, we have these transform options, flipping, rotating and so on, responsive, resize, and here we have the text panel, which is important part of this text. You can increase the size of your text by simply hovering over this dot, clicking on it and simply dragging, and it's really useful thing to do. If you want to position your text, you can use these, as I said. And finally, let's now move on to text. So you can choose your font family here. So let's go with Poppins, for example, which is a free Google font. And I'm going to simply position it in the center like so. Then what you can do is use the size. So currently it's at 47. You can use Shift and up arrow to jump between 10 different increments in size. So 57, 67 and so on. Next, we have how the font weight is going to look like. So depending on which font you have selected here, you might have different weights. So some of them have 1 or 2, some of them have 10, 20. So depending on which font you have selected. So let's go, for example, with extra light. See how that looks like, light. And you can also use the Shift key here as well. Simply go up or down and see how all of these look like. Next, what we have is character spacing, and this is basically the spacing between each character. So if I use my Shift key and increments, you can see how this looks like. So it's really useful if you want to do that. Here we have line spacing. So spacing between each of these lines of text. And finally, what we have right here is paragraph spacing, but I have to create a paragraph to do that. But basically it does almost the same thing as the line spacing. Here we have left align. So when you're typing, it's going to go from left to right. Here we have center aligned. So you can see how that looks like. And it basically is going to go from center outwards. And here we have right aligned. So basically the same thing as left align. Here we have auto width, so no matter what you are typing, let's go with left align to show that. No matter what you are typing, and when you exit, you can see it's auto width. Here we have auto height. So let's say, for example, that I want to I don't know, type something more, you can see that it goes automatically in height as well. And finally we have fixed size, which is the paragraph I was talking about. So if I click right here and lower it down, you can see this is a great option if you have loads of text. And for example, if I did something like this and I know there is more text down below, I can always click right here and it's going to show me the text which is down below. What we have here is uppercase, we have lowercase, title case, so each first letter of the word is going to be titled. Then we have superscript, so let me add a number 2 for example, and when I click superscript you can see what it does right there. We have subscript, so basically the same thing but below. We have underline, so all of the text is going to be underlined, and we have strike through, so it's going to go through the text itself. You can always click right here to change it and to add whatever you want, but basically uppercase, lowercase, title case, and let's leave it at that for now. Below that we have a basic appearance, so same as for the shapes. We have opacity, so if I hit 2 on my keyboard it's going to go 20 in opacity. Blend mode, fill color, border color, shadow, background blur, and mark for export. So basically all of the same things that we had inside of our shapes. Next up, let's move on to artboards, and I'm going to quickly explain what artboards are and what are some benefits of using artboards versus not. As we explained in a previous welcome video where I said about artboards and where you can create them and how you can create all of these different sizes, inside of Adobe XD there is also one more option for the artboards as well. So when you click right here on your left, you are going to be presented with all of these different artboard sizes, which is basically exactly the same as here on the home page. So all of these sizes are located here as well. But why are artboards so useful and what you can do with your artboards? Basically, you can click right here, you can change the size. So let's say that this is our main screen, and you can change the size from your artboard directly from here. You can rotate it, so you can click like this or like this, and let's say that I want to change the size to, I don't know, let's say something like 2453 for whatever reason. It's going to extend to here. You can also click responsive resize, so when you start resizing you can see how the text is going to act. And this is really useful obviously when you're doing responsive design, which we're going to touch on a little bit later. Then you have auto and manual. You can click and decide whatever you want, responsive resize, and how you want it to work. Next up, when I click right there, you can see we have vertical scrolling and we have none, but you can also use those options which I mentioned previously about horizontal, vertical scrolling and scrolling in all directions, and I'm going to touch on that a bit later. Next, we have appearance. So if we click right here, you can see this is the color of your artboard itself. So you can leave it at white, or you can change it to whichever color you want. And finally below that we have layout. So if I click right here, you can see that we have layout, or we have square. If you have your square size, you can change it to here. So square grid size of 8, I can change it to something huge like 80. And you can see how that looks like if it's easier for you to align items on the grid like this. Or you can select it from here, and then you can change it from square to layout, and then you can play around with these columns. So columns are usually useful for UI/UX design because you can align things to different columns, and you can simply count columns, which is really easily then translated into code because developers can easily understand in terms of columns how wide something is, how tall something is, and so on. So here we have 12 columns, and we have this nice 1920 by 1080 artboard size, which can be really useful for web design, for example. So if I choose 2, I can use something like 8 columns. I can even change it down to 4, but let's go back to 12, and I can change the gutter width to 60, for example. And gutter width is basically the spacing between these columns, and columns are these blue bits in our case. So you can change the column width to, I don't know, 60, for example, to make your columns even narrower, and you can change different margins. So margins are the spacing between these columns, so here on the left and on the right, you can change them automatically. So for example, if I type in 200, you can see margins are now really huge, but you can also go right here and to change different margins. So if I hover, you can see we have margin top, margin right, bottom and left. You can also use default. So if I click right here, this is the default option, or you can make default. So if we, for example, make these changes 60, 60, and let's use this as a 60, for example, and we want to make this as our default, you can simply click make default. You can also give it a name and it's going to make a default option for that. Finally, if you think that these columns are too distracting, you can click right here and you can lower down the opacity of these columns so they are not too distracting to look at, and you can always glance at your content at ease. Libraries are a great asset to have in Adobe XD because you can quickly organize all of your files, all of your colors, all of your character styles and so much more in one single space where you can easily navigate around and you can access all of those files at once. So it's located right here. And if you click on it, you can see that you can add colors, you can add character styles, and you can add components. So let me quickly show you how that works like. So let's duplicate this by hitting Ctrl D and let's lower it down to 40, for example, and let's change it from medium to light. And let's also change the color to this really dark black, and let's change this to lighter color, or even better, let's use something completely different. So let's use this color, for example, and let me click right here and then right here to hide my guides. So what you can do from here is for the colors, I can click right here and I can add the color of my text as a color swatch. And I can also do the same for this one. For the character styles, I can do the same. So click right here and then add it to here. So because we have this, and let me delete it like so. Let's now go ahead and change these. So let's right click on this one, hit delete. Like so. So now we just have this one at 57, and I will also do the same from here. So we don't have this subscript anymore. So I can click right here and then add it, but it also added, so I can always click on one of these and hit delete here. And there we have it, basically. So this is how you add colors, this is how you add character styles, and you can do this for every single shape. So let's use this, for example, and let's use this, and let's remove the border, for example, and you can simply click right here to add this color. You can also double click right here and call it, for example, main red, call this main blue, for example, like so, and let's call this the text color or main text or whatever. And this is really useful to do if you're dealing with developers later, because then you can create these tokens and it's going to be easily accessible to them. Now, in terms of components, let's say that, for example, I want to duplicate this, hit Ctrl D, then Shift Alt and left click on my mouse, and I'm going to change this, and for example, let's use these two, and instead of this, let's create something like this. And also, if I click on it, for example, maybe I can change it to 20, and let's say that this is our icon or our logo or whatever, and I can go to my layers panel, double click right here and call it logo, just for example. And what you can do is you can click right here to add it as a component. You can also click right here to add it as a component, or you can hit Ctrl or Command K on your keyboard and you can add it as a component. So for example, if you want to create a new artboard, and let's say that we want to create this one, you can click on your logo, drag it and drop it right here. And you can see that it's an instance of a component because it gives you this hollowed out diamond that you can see right here. And because this is our main component, you can see it's filled in. So if I take them and bring them here side by side, you can clearly see the difference. Let's delete this one, hit Ctrl 0 to snap back into place, and space and left click to navigate around. So if I click right here, you can see it's filled and this is empty. So what that basically means is when your diamond is filled, you're working with main component, and when your diamond is hollowed out, you're working as an instance of that main component. What that basically means in plain English, whatever changes you are creating and making to the main component, they are automatically going to translate to the child component, or this hollowed out diamond in this case. So for example, if you didn't touch the child component at all, then whatever change you make to the main component, it's going to translate to the child component automatically. But for example, if you overridden those changes, if in our case, for example, let's say that maybe if I double click right here like so and change it to 10 or even to 0, then I jump in right here, double click inside to enter my shape and change it to 50. You can see it updated here, but not here. It updated in the main component, not in the child component, because we manually changed this value in the child component before we did it in the main component. So you can just imagine that you can do this for all of your work in Adobe XD. So let's just imagine that you, for example, created a navigation for your website, and as a main component you have it as so, but as a child component, let's say that you have items selected in your navigation, so it's not going to change in the main component, but it's going to change in the child component. But in the child component, you didn't change background color, for example. So you can quickly jump into main component, change the background color. It's going to update all of your child components, and you can have as many child components as you want. In this case, I only have one just to demonstrate how this looks like. And let's say that, for example, in that navigation main component, you want to change character style. For example, you want to update the font family, you want to update the font size, maybe you even want to update the font color. You can do that in the main component, and it will update throughout your child components, no matter how many child components you have. Just imagine changes you make to your child components are not going to translate to your main components, but they are going to translate the other way around. So from main component to child components. So let's quickly go back to here and let me explain that a little bit more. So you can see on this main component, we have this red color selected. But if I select this color, for example, it's going to update child component as well. And let's make this a bit more interesting. Let's hold our Alt key or Option on a Mac, and I can make another child component. So you can see these hollowed out diamonds are not changing. So basically you have filled out or you have hollowed out, and that's basically it. So let's say that on this one, I can jump inside, double click, and I can change it to blue. So let's update this one to red, but this blue one is not going to change because it's overridden inside of this child component rather than in this main component. So basically you can see how these components look like, how they work, and they are really useful, especially if you're working with, let's say, icons, if you're working with complex elements such as navigation, because for example, you can create different styles of components and you can create different elements to your components, and then you can move on from there. You can also create something which is called component states, and that basically means when you move into prototyping later, how that component is going to change. So let me show you that in a real example. So here we have this component, and let's say that I want to create a different state, for example, for the hover state. So I can simply click right here and add a new state or a hover state. In our case, I just want to create a hover state, and I'm going to explain all of these states a little bit later in the course in a bit more details. But for now, let's just quickly explore hover states just so that you can understand how it all works. So here we have hover states. Once again, you can click right here, click hover state and add it. You can also change it. So for example, hover, and inside of the hover state, let's add a border, or let's add a background shadow, or let's add some elements. So click on the shadow, let's bring in some ridiculous size, so 20, 20, and then 20. So something really huge like that. And if I take you back to my layers panel, you can see when you click right here, you can change between your component states. But if you click right here, you can see that you also have this component states, and here as well, because we didn't include any component states before we changed it and included in our main component, we didn't include it in our child components. So once again, whatever change you make to your main component, it's going to translate to your child components. So here we are at the default state, and if I click right here just to preview these changes, and if I quickly hover over it, you can see that it changes and that it updates in real time. But also you can hover right here and you can see that it changes because we made that change here, and it also updates same as with the main component. But because we have this big corner radius here, we don't have it here in these two child components. When I hover, you can see that it updates and gives us this change because we made it in the main component. So that's basically it for the components. You can play around with them, you can add different states. I'm going to explain that a little bit later in this course, what you can do with these components. And these are the libraries. So once again, if I take you back to here, you can see we have colors. You can have as many colors you want. Character styles, you can have as many of them as you want as well. You can also click right here to change between grid view and list view, whatever it's easier to you. Perhaps this view is much more suited if you have multiple icons, multiple logos and so on. And you can also expand this panel to give yourself a bit more space, and you can always hide it by simply clicking right here, so it's not in your way. And you can do that for both libraries, layers and plugins as well. You can also search document items. So for example, logo, here it is. So it's much easier to find, especially if you have hundreds of different icons. Let's say that, for example, I have 50 different search icons. I can type in search and then I can sort between those search icons right here in this list, rather than scrolling down and searching between all of my icons. Finally, you can have document assets right here. So if I go back, it's going to take you to the libraries. And these are the document assets, so all of the assets from our document, which you can see right here. Or you can also create my library, which is going to take you to the cloud, and you can create your library, for example, with custom images, custom colors, custom fonts, custom icons, and so much more in the cloud. And you can simply click there with my library. It's going to pull up that library from the cloud, and you can simply drag and drop the elements from the cloud directly onto your document. So that's one great feature and benefit to have with these online libraries. Basically, if you are on a free plan, you have this access to online libraries, but your space is limited. If you have the premium plan, you have unlimited space, so you can have as many files as you want on the cloud. When you're working as a UI UX designer, chances are you're going to have a bunch of different layers, and layer management is really important to have as a skill, but as a sort of habit, a good habit to have, because as your projects grow, as they get bigger, the amount of layers is going to be huge. So layer organization is really great skill to have as a UI UX designer. So let me show you. In Adobe XD, layers are located right here. So here I have just a project from my YouTube channel, and you can check it out. I will leave the link so you can go and check it out there and see how I created this if you want to create it for yourself. But layers are located just below our libraries, and same story for the libraries. You can click to show and click to hide them. You cannot see any layers before you select the artboard. So if I select this artboard, for example, you can see all of these layers right here. So let me zoom in a little bit closer and explain what's going on. For example, in this text, so here I have the title, I have the Air Max, which is this text right here, and I have this mask, and we're going to touch up on the masks a little bit later. And you can select all of these items, for example. So if I go from here to here, holding my shift key, then hitting Control or Command G, so that I can group them in a group. I can double click right here and change the name of this group to website, for example. And then you can organize your layers that way. Organizing them into groups is really useful, because if I unzoom just a little bit, you can see that I have a group for my navigation. Inside of that group, I have 3 items, and I always like to go from left to right, because majority of the world's population is reading from left to right. So therefore I have this organization. So I go from logo, which is on the left, top left, search, and then menu. You don't need to have organization like this. It's just how I do things. It's really all up to you and how you want to structure your layers, but I like to do them that way. So you can see I put them in a group because it's much easier to hide this group. You can simply do that by clicking here. If you want, for example, to reposition some of these elements and you don't want this navigation to be obtrusive and to be into place, you can also lock it, so you cannot move it. So if I click right here, you can see it stays in place, and you can also mark it for export. So you can click right there and you can export it later if you want to. You can also leave some items outside of the groups, as I did right here, but you can put them, for example, I have a group and an item. I can hit Ctrl G and put them in a separate group. So it's really all up to you how you want to structure your elements. You can, for example, also divide the page to top part, middle part, bottom part. You can combine your elements that way. So it's really all up to you and how you want to structure your elements inside of the layers panel. You can also reorganize some of these, so you can select a group, for example, drag and drop it below certain elements, and you can also do that for the elements. You can put it all the way down here, and you can hit Ctrl 0 as many times as you want to organize all of your layers. That's basically it for the layers, but they are really important, and I cannot stress enough how important it is, especially if you're getting started. Learn to name your layers, because you're going to be quickly caught up in this moment where you don't know what anything is because you didn't name it correctly. And now you have to send the file to your client. Instead of wasting hours on end just to rename your layers, try to rename it as you move along, or at least try to put them in a group and rename a group. So when you send the file to the developer is going to be easily able to understand what everything is and where everything is located on the page. Plugins are really useful thing to have in Adobe XD because it expands XD's functionality and goes back and away from basics, and you can really do some really advanced things in Adobe XD by using plugins. So plugins are located right here on the left. You can click right there and it's going to show you the list of currently installed plugins. Now these are just mine plugins. If you're just installing Adobe XD, this list is going to be empty, so you have to start installing plugins on your machine. And to do that, you can simply click on this plus icon right here. It's going to take you here, and here you can discover, browse and manage. If you click manage, obviously you can see all of your existing plugins, and you can hit update all. In my case, I have these two which need to be updated. So you can browse, and let's say that I want to, I don't know, include a text, and you can hit enter, and you can see all of these different text plugins which you can use to increase and improve your speed. I have Lorem Ipsum in my case, which I'm going to show you, but that's basically how browse feature works. And discover is really great because you have editor's choice, you have jumpstart your design, so featured collection. What they think that all designers should have is located right there, so you can check it out, or you can form your own list. It really depends on what you are doing, because plugins I'm using for myself perhaps are not going to be that useful for you. Here we have essential plugins, so document chat, fancy maps, list plugin and glitch. I really recommend to use fancy maps because you can, for example, install a quick map right there. It's going to pull information from Google Maps and it's going to integrate that really easily. You can connect XD to your favorite apps, so if you're using Slack, if you're using Zeppelin, Dropbox and so on, you can connect it. We have collections, so popular sketch plugins if you're doing some wireframing, for example, copywriting and localization, testing and usability, so for all of these different features. And you can also browse through categories, so collaboration, tools and automation, usability and testing, publishing handoff and design assets. So let's say that I want to click on the design assets. It's going to show me different plugins which are in the design assets category, or I can simply click right here and search between these different categories or search directly from here. Basically, when you install a plugin, so let's say I want to use this UI faces, and I can click on it to install it. You can read a review, or you can click on the plugin, you can see what it does. You can see all of these different examples, and you can see the tags, what's new, so updates, rating, you can see who made it and so much more. So that's basically it. How can you use and update plugins where they are located, and let's now explore some plugins. So here I have this text, and let's say that I want to edit this text, but let's say that I just created it and I don't know what to include there. What I can use is use a plugin called Lorem Ipsum, for example. You can simply select your text, click right here, fill with placeholder text. You can choose whatever you want from here. And let's see, end with punctuation mark, let's say period. Include line breaks, you can uncheck that or check that, whatever you want. Trim text area height to fit inserted text. And I have 2 lines of text, so hit insert. And it's going to insert this text. You can try that again. You can fill with placeholder text last settings, quick Lorem Ipsum trim height, and so much more. So let's say that I want to have my fixed size. Let's say I want to increase it to here, and for example to here maybe. Fill with placeholder text. Now it fills up with text. You can also cut it to height. You can also do a fixed size. You can do like this. And for example, I need more text. Then I can quick Lorem Ipsum. It's going to fill in. Maybe I can extend it a bit more down to something like this. Quick Lorem Ipsum is going to fill in. So that's basically how Lorem Ipsum works and how this concrete plugin works. But let's say that you want, I don't know, something else. So for example, we have this UI faces. And let's quickly undo this a couple of times. So undo this to my first and original setting, which was this. So let's say that I need a UI right here, maybe UI icon, maybe some avatar or something else. Let's quickly exit of this information. So somewhere around here. Let's say that I want to include a face of a person inside. I can go to something like UI faces, and I can take my source from Unsplash, for example. You can go to filters, and let's say that I want to include a female from, let's say, I don't know, 30 to 40-year-old, and emotion is happy, and that's all I need. You can also go to advanced and let's say apply randomly or select photos. I will choose apply randomly. It's working in a background. And after it scans the website for my specific tasks, because I tasked it to find me a female in this certain demographic, you can see that it found this free image from Unsplash. And you can also do this for additional images. So let's say that I want to create, I don't know, 2 or more. So let's say that I want to quickly delete this one. Let's quickly go to here. You can also use the repeat grid, but I will explain repeat grid a little bit later. And let's say that I want to fill it in these 3 from Unsplash, filters, let's say to 30, I don't know, male and female, and apply randomly. It's going to work its magic, and obviously the more images you have for it to fill in, it will take more time. Obviously your internet connection speed comes into account here, and once it's done, you can see what it does right here. So here we have 3 females, and I also selected a male. So let's say that I want this to be a male. I can click outside, then uncheck female, click apply randomly, and it's going to apply a random male face right here to this image as soon as it found the criteria matched right there. So there we have it. Those are the plugins, and you can obviously play around with these different plugins. You can install how many of them as you want. You can see that I have just a few right here, but you can imagine you can have a list of plugins right here, and you can scroll up and down and basically search for these different plugins and apply them. And finally, discover plugins. I can go to manage plugins, and let's say that I want to, I don't know, delete this pattern maker, for example, because as you can see, it keeps showing up right here. I can hit uninstall. It's going to uninstall it, and you can see automatically we cannot see them anymore right here. So basically those are the plugins, and it's really all up to you, the designer, how you're going to use these plugins. You can, for example, just use Lorem Ipsum and maps. You can use this, what we used, UI faces, for these faces to generate these random avatars. You can use something like a whiteboard, which is really incredible. You can also use different plugins which are going to be able to provide you with different layouts already pre-created, so you can just drag and drop these layouts inside of your artboards and start creating designs that way. So it's really all up to you how you are going to use these plugins, and plugins list is ever expanding. Anybody can create a plugin for Adobe XD, so make sure to always check it out. Make sure to follow Adobe XD's team on Twitter, for example, when they are launching new plugins which are really cool and they think that more and more people should know about them. They will always post to Twitter, for example, and to their Facebook page, so make sure to follow them there for all of the latest plugins and news about plugins. Repeat Grid is this amazing tool in Adobe XD which is able to cut short all of these boring tasks of repeating elements. So instead of copying and pasting different elements, then positioning them below each other, you can simply use Repeat Grid to do these tedious tasks. So here we have this design, and I'm starting with a wireframe, and let's say that I want to create a list of these popular hotels. So first things first, let's quickly get rid of some of these elements, and I'm going to move them all in a group like so. Control G, and then I'm able to simply move them down, and let's get rid of this. So let's say that I need to fill in this space and that I need to include some more information. What I can do is simply select this and hit Repeat Grid. What that's going to be allow me to do is expand the amount of all of these different elements. So let's say that I want to create 2 of them, and I want to align them on the left with these right here at the bottom. And let's say that I want to create, I don't know, 3 or 4 more, for example, something like that. And basically this is how easy Repeat Grid is to work with. And then if you have your text files with you, then you can easily drag and drop a text inside and you can easily change it. So let me quickly show you how that works. Let's say that I want to create a text file. So let me quickly create one on my computer and call it, for example, cities. And this is how it looks like. I'm simply using Notepad. On Windows, you can use the default option on Mac, and you can see we have Honolulu, US. Let's say that I want to use that one, but I also want to use London, UK, Paris, France, Rome, Italy, and let's give it 2 more, for example, Belgrade, Serbia, and let's say Montreal, Canada. Let's say that this is all that we have created, and now how can you actually use this file in Adobe XD really quickly? So what I'm going to do is close it, hit save, and I'm going to simply drag it from my desktop. As you can see, I named it cities, and simply place it on the first one. Because I don't want it to place it right here, I wanted to place it on the first one because we created Repeat Grid from this first one. So you can paste it right here, and you can see it automatically updated throughout all of these. So you can have as many of these documents as you want. You can have them, for example, for male names, female names, cities, countries, different food recipes, whatever you are doing in Adobe XD, you can have different files for that different text. You can also generate this on the web. You can use random websites, and you can generate this information, which is going to be really useful because then you can create real looking websites, real looking apps, real looking dashboards really quickly because you have all of these files prepared already. So let's say that I want, instead of calling this ocean view and whatever, let's say that I want to create a different one for, let's say, I don't know, people, and I'm going to call them people. And you can see if I double click, I called it people, and let's say that I want to give them names. So Jack, Mary, I don't know, Mark, Stephanie, Jude, and let's say Graham. And now that I completed all of these names, what I can do is hit close, and I can locate the images on my computer which I want to include inside, or you can use a random tool. Let's say that I want to include them here, and go to UI faces, go to pixels this time, and let's go with filters, male and female, and let's say that they are all happy, and click apply randomly. This plugin is going to work its magic, but you can also do the same thing from your computer. So I'm going to show you that as well. So you can see that it filled in with all of these different images, but as I said, you can do that for let's say male. And here I have just some of these images pre-prepared, and I can simply drag and drop how many of these images I want. So let's say that I have 6 of them. I can select 6 different images, and I can simply drag and drop them from my computer. Let me enlarge this in just a second. So 6 of them, I can simply click, drag and drop them into the first one, and it's going to populate with these 6 images. So as you can see, repeat grid is really extremely useful. And when you're working with different components, you can see that I have this color selected. Perhaps I want to edit this color. I can right click and I can simply go to edit. And let's say that I want to use a bluish version of that. You can see wherever that color is selected, it's going to change to that color and update in real time. So you can see it's really useful to work with repeat grid. It's really extremely simple. All you need to do is simply create one instance of whatever design layout you want, hit repeat grid, create how many variants you want, and you can also use files like I showed you with the text files, unlimited number of files. So as I said, you can do one for the names of the cities, names of the countries, and so much more, or you can simply use plugins to apply different layouts, different elements to your repeat grid designs. If you want to have portions of your elements or of your designs hidden from view, you can always use masks in Adobe XD to achieve that. So let me show you on my example how I use masks and how you can do too. So here I have an example of the animation of my button. So if I hit right here, just quick preview, and click right here, you can see a lot of it is going on. And you can see this whole tutorial on my YouTube channel, but basically a lot of these different things are happening, and all because of the masks. So if I jump in right here and show you on my layers panel what's going on. So obviously I have a different component and different component states with different animations. Once again, if you want to check it out how it's done, check out my YouTube channel. That video is going to be there so you can learn how I did this. But basically here we have this button, and the thing we are interested is mask. So basically how masks work is you can see that we have all of these different elements inside. So we have delivery truck icon, which is this right here, delivery sent, which is the text you cannot see at the moment, purchase now, which is this text right here, and obviously button. So how I created this mask, for example, let me quickly copy all of it. So hit Control C, and let's say that I want to hit Control D right here, and let's delete all of these things, and I will right click, ungroup component, right click, ungroup mask, and hit delete right here. So once again, what we have right here is this delivery truck. Let's say that I want to position it right here. We have delivery sent, and I want to move it out of the way to somewhere around here. And we have purchase now, with which I want to move right here in the center. So how can I mask everything so people cannot see this delivery sent? And let's even change its color, because it really doesn't matter which color it is. So how can you do that? Simply duplicate this, which is the original button, hit Control D. And basically in our case, because I want to see what's going on, I want to expand it just a little bit. So Shift, Alt and left click, I can expand it to here. I can include the border, remove the color, just so that we can see what's going on in our case. Position it right here. And all you need to do is simply position it to the top, click on it, hold your Shift key, click right here to select all of your items, then hit Shift Control M or Shift Command M on a mask, and it will on a Mac, sorry, and it will create a mask of all of these components. So basically what happened here is mask has hidden components and elements which are outside of view. So basically your view is your mask, and because our mask is this big, everything which is located outside of our mask cannot be seen. Everything which is located in can be seen. So basically you can see that I can move this to here maybe, and you're not going to be able to see the whole truck when I click outside because it's masked from here. You can obviously move your mask down a little bit if you want to, you can move it up, you can play around with it, and you can create masks using pen tool, for example. So if you have complex shapes that you need to select, you can obviously use pen tool for that, and then you can place that shape you created using pen tool on the top of your layer stack, like I did with the copy of my button here. Then simply select it, select everything below that, hit Shift Control M or Shift Command M to create a mask, and then you can play around with it. Obviously you can create different states like I showed you here, and let me show you one more time in our example what's happening here. So in the first state, when users click or tap Purchase Now, it's going to disappear, truck is going to drop, disappear, button is going to appear once again, and we have this delivery sent. So as you can see, everything is done with a mask, everything is done with the component states. So masks are really important, a really powerful tool to have in Adobe XD. So I really encourage you to test it out and try it for yourself and see what you can create using masks. Adobe XD has some 3D functionality, and although it is really limited, it's a great thing to have and a great option to have just to spice up your designs here and there just a little bit. But it's important thing to note that Adobe XD is not a 3D tool by any means. If you want to learn 3D, I really encourage you to test out free tools such as Blender, for example, just to understand what real 3D is and what you can do with it. But in Adobe XD you can really do some fun stuff, so let me quickly show you one example. This is the video I have created recently on my YouTube channel, and you can check it out there as a tutorial to see how it's done. But basically, if I zoom in, I have all of these cards, and let's say that I want to create this card to be 3D. All I need to do is simply click right here. This thing appears and you can click and rotate, and you can see it's really basic. So as I said, it is 3D, but at the same time it's not really all that advanced, but you can do some pretty cool things with this tool. So if I quickly show you what I have created for that tutorial, if I click right here, then click here on the preview and click right here, you can see that it goes from stock, which is this one, to 3D with just a single tap. So you can see your options are really limited with this 3D function. So let's explore it a bit deeper. So once again, if I click right here to go inside of my 3D option, what I have right here are width and height. So basically the same thing, X and Y, same thing, but here we have these three. So this is the X rotation, this is the Y rotation, and finally this is the Z rotation or the Z rotation, however you want. And this is the Z position. So instead of X and Y, now we have the Z position as well. So what you can do is explore a little bit and see which all of these rotations are by simply clicking here and then holding your Shift key and then up or down arrows. So if I take you 10 increments at a time, you can see what X axis is. If I do the same, you can see what the Y axis is, and you can go the other way around to negative, and it's going to change to that way as well. And you can also click right here and to see what's that doing. So you can go, for example, 30 like this, and then you can play around with 30 like this, and perhaps, I don't know, 30 like this, and you can have these crazy shapes in 3D, or you can simply hit 0, tab 0, tab 0, and then enter. It's going to go back to the default option. And it's really important, if you want to get out of the 3D, you really need to hit this right here, which is the 3D transforms, or you can use Control or Command T to go inside. Then it's going to exit from the 3D. What's really great is you can use different component states with 3D. So for example, this is my default state, but you can just imagine that, let's say that I want to use different, let's say, background shadow or different colors or whatever else in my next state. So let's say that I want to, I don't know, this first state to be like this, but when they click, background is going to change the color, this is going to change the color, and so much more. So let's say that that state is going to be called clicked state. Now you can do that here, and it's going to translate into 3D, which is really a great addition, but that's basically it. It's really limited, but you can do some really cool stuff. What you cannot do at the moment of making of this video is hover 3D. That's why I showed you how to do a tap, but you still cannot do a hover. But in the meantime, when you're watching this video, perhaps XD team launched that update, or they are going to update it in the future and launch that update. So just make sure, as I said at the beginning of this course, to check your updates, to check Adobe XD team and to see what they are working on currently and the updates they are launching. But basically that's all the 3D you're going to have at the moment in Adobe XD, but perhaps you're going to watch this video in a year from now and perhaps they update it. So just make sure to check your update and to check the options you might have for 3D. Using mockups in Adobe XD is really quite simple, but the trouble is at the moment you don't have that big of a choice of mockups. So I would really recommend either a free online tool, or if you have Photoshop, your options are basically endless because there are thousands and thousands of different mockups online that you can download for free or even purchase different packages and use directly into Photoshop. So you can export files from XD, save them as a PNG, for example, or JPEG, and then simply open them up in Photoshop mockups, place them in mockups, and then create different presentations. But if you want to create everything inside of Adobe XD, the only great option I found is Angle. It works really great for me, but I found some people online don't really get it. They get the free version, they didn't get the pay version. So take it with a grain of salt. It works for me, and I'm going to show you that it works for me, but it might not work for you. So here I have my Chatty UI kit, and you can get this UI kit on my website if you want to. I can hit Ctrl+C to copy this one, for example, and then I can go back to Angle, or even better, I can take this mockup, for example, and you can see that I have a premium Angle package. This is a bit older version, they have newer version now, but let's say for example that I want to use this one of a phone. Hit Ctrl+C to copy it, and you can see that I have multiple of these, and they are not even all of them listed here because they are lacking iMac, for example. So if I take you back to my Chatty UI kit, let's say that I want to paste in that mockup right here, and I want to position it somewhere around here. And let's say that you are creating a presentation. So let's click right here, and maybe your presentation is 1920 by 1080. Let's call it presentation, like so. Let's move that mockup inside and let's give it some color. So if I go right here, go with main blue maybe, and then yeah, let's just leave it like that, for example. So you need to position your mockup of this screen into your phone. So how you're going to do that? Simply click Control and click, go to your layers panel. You need to be on the screen layer, which I am at the moment. Then let's see, this is called splash screen. So you need to go to plugins. You need to find the angle plugin, apply mockup. Then you need to select the splash screen and hit apply. It's going to work its magic, and in some cases it's going to take a lot of time, but in my case, because it's really quite simple, it applied the mockup and you can see how that looks like. So if you want to, for example, use this feed number 5, process is exactly the same. So I'm going to go to the screen layer, go to the plugins, apply mockup, and feed number 5. Let's locate it right here. So feed number 5, here it is. And you can play around with pixel density, quality, orientation. So you have best and you have a little bit better, you have average and so on, but I just choose to be at best. Hit apply, and you can see it's work its magic. Depending of how big your screen is or how tall it is, how many different elements are inside, it's going to take you more time or less time, but as you can see, it takes just a few seconds in my case. So as I said, this is really a great thing to have, and let's go back to this, and let's say that now I want to use this mockup, or even better, let's use, I don't know, this one. Hit Ctrl+C, and then I can go back to my main presentation file, extend my artboard, hit Ctrl+V to paste it inside. Perhaps it's going to be located here, and now I can click inside, locate my screen layer, which is this right here, and let's say that I want to include this invite accepted screen. So let's go back to here, apply mockup, locate it, so invite accepted. Let's see where it is located. if I can even find it here on the list. Here it is, invite accepted. Hit apply. It's going to work its magic. And perhaps it's going to take a little bit longer because of all of these different elements, but here they are. So if I select the entire mockup, bring it down, you can see that the quality is pretty decent, but it's going to obviously compress a little bit, so it's not going to be as high quality as this is, but this is really great and good enough for presentation. So basically that's Angle, and you can go to their website. You can simply type in Angle for XD, for example. It's going to take you there. As you can see, it works in my case, but I found online some people say it doesn't work. So what you can do is install their plugin. As you can see, here it is right here. You can simply go to plugins list. You can go to the search, type in Angle, and you can see it's right here. I installed it. And after you install it, go to their website and check out the free version of the mockups they have. See if you like it, see if they work for you. If they do, great. Then you can really decide if you want to purchase the full premium package. And you can see in my case, if I show you that one more time, how many of these mockups there are. This is also not the full story, because you can also get all of these wallpapers. So this is how it looks like. So you can get these wallpapers and you can use them in your designs, and they are extremely big. So let's say this blur number 1, and let's go back to our Angle and let's go back to our design. So let's say that I want to include an image here. And let's go inside to this background. For example, I want to include this blur. I can simply drag and drop it inside, and you can see how big this is if I double click. So you can really scale it up. And if I check one more time, I think they are something like 4K or 5K even. Yeah, 5120 2880 in size. So you also get these wallpapers, and you get all of these different Angle mockups. And you can see we have watch, we have pixel, Nexus, Galaxy, iMac, and so much more. So if you want, you can check it out, but make sure to test it out for yourself, because I saw online some people complaining that they cannot either install the plugin, or the mockups don't work, or they don't work in their case, but they work in friend's case. So make sure to test it out for yourself. But that's basically it for the mockups in Adobe XD. If you have Photoshop, if you have different online options, I really recommend those, because those are much better in quality, in range. You can also choose different devices. You can choose, for example, to put your design on a printing truck, or to put it on a house, or on a sign, or whatever, but you don't have that option in Adobe XD as of yet. You can also jump between Photoshop and XD and save the image, save your designs as images in XD, then jump into Photoshop, position them in mockups there, then hit Ctrl or Command S. They will apply automatically to XD files, but that's really a workaround. So your options are either Angle, or if by the time you're watching this video, perhaps some different options crop up, but in my case for now, it's either Angle or Photoshop or some different online tool. So once again, it's really all up to you to decide what you want, what you're most comfortable with using. And if you want, you can pay for Angle, or you don't have to. You can use the free version, which is really limited. Knowing how to use keyboard shortcuts is extremely important, because it's going to speed up your process, it's going to speed up your workflow, and it's going to make your life as a UI UX designer a lot easier if you know how to use certain shortcuts. For the start, make sure to learn the most important ones, but later on, when you move down the line and improve your knowledge of UI UX or Adobe XD as a tool, then I really recommend to learn a bit more advanced shortcuts. So to show you what I mean, here I have a design which I created on my YouTube channel. So if you want to see how I created it, head on over to the YouTube channel and check it out there. It's actually a series of designs, and we are moving from paper sketch to wireframe in XD, then to design, and finally prototyping. So if you want, you can check it out there. And to show you what I mean, here we have a bunch of these different elements. So let's say that I want to click right here, then right click. You can see next to all of these, you can see these shortcuts. Obviously, the most important and commonly used is undo, which is Control or Command Z, but you also have Control V, Control C, you have Command V or Command C, of course, but you have multiple of these. So if I right click right here, you can see copy, you can see paste, paste appearance. duplicate, delete, move to front, move to back, group, ungroup. So there are a lot of these different shortcuts, and I really recommend that you learn as many of them as you want and as you need, especially when you develop your workflow. And when you see that you are using same tasks over and over again, it's really important to save those tasks as shortcuts, because it's going to improve your speed massively. To learn these shortcuts, you can obviously do what I'm doing right here. So you can right click and you can see what everything is, or you can go to a website like this. You can simply Google Adobe XD shortcuts and it's going to take you official Adobe help, and you can see keyboard shortcuts right here. If you want, you can click to download the PDF version of these shortcuts, and you can see it's showing both Mac and Windows options. So you can see general shortcuts for edit menu, for file menu, for path or pen tool, for layers, objects, groups, and so on. So you can download a PDF, learn shortcuts that way, or you can explore them through Adobe XD and simply learn what is the best way to save yourself some time when you're working as a UI UX designer in Adobe XD is by using shortcuts, because you're going to see as soon as they go into your daily routine, you're going to be able to be much faster, much more productive, and you're going to be enjoying XD much more, because you're not going to think and overthink what you're doing, because your mental capacity has increased with all of these XD shortcuts. You can work with multiple files and file types in Adobe XD, so from basic image file types like a JPEG, PNG, you can open and save PDF files, you can work with SVG icons and much more. Also, file types are really important when it comes to document files. So for example, because Adobe XD is obviously created by Adobe, you can easily open and work with Photoshop files. You can also work with Illustrator files, and you can also work with Sketch files, because they are trying to take as many Sketch users as possible and bring them to Adobe XD and make them stay there. So if I show you here on a home screen, what we have is on your computer, you can click there and you can clearly see get started with existing designs. So this is what I was talking about. If you have a file, so for example, a client, a developer, a teammate, somebody else send you the file type and you need to open it up in Adobe XD, you can do it from here. So here we have PSD or AI, so Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator file. We have XD obviously, and this is what XD opens up the best and the easiest, but we also have sketch files, and this is what I wanted to show you. So I have some sketch file from InVision and I will open it up. And one great thing about Adobe XD files is they are really small, but here with this sketch file with all of these different components, layer styles and so much more, we have a large file. So that's why if you take a look right here, it's taking a really long time to open. But what Adobe XD is trying to do is open up this sketch file and convert it to Adobe XD file. So as you can see, it starts filling up with these components, and it's going to show a bit more now, as you can see. And what it's doing is trying to take sketch components and bring them right here. So as you can see, we are still missing colors, we are still missing character styles. But if you update to these fonts, which are missing in this case, they are going to appear here in the character style panel. But basically, this is how that is going to look like. So we have welcome screen, we have mobile version. If I scroll down, we have tablet version. And finally, we have web version here as well. We have UI colors, so this is basically their sort of style guide. We have these main components, and you can obviously create components from these elements, and you can see that there are bugs sometimes, like with this text for example, but we have it as a component here. We also have symbols, which are sketch way of saying components, so they are used to be called symbols in XD as well. Now they are under components. So basically this is how that looks like. So you can see it does look quite a bit messy, but you can still work with these files. You can open them, you can save them as native components in Adobe XD, and then you can save the XD file later, and you can share that file with clients, developers, and your teammates. So finally, let me show you the structure. So if we take, for example, this symbol right here, and if I switch to my layers panel right here, you can see what we have. So we have this form, So we can edit all of these elements. Let's say that I want to change the color. You can see it updates really easily. We have this icon in the center, so you can easily edit the appearance of this icon. For example, we have this text, and let's say that I want to update this. So let's say that I want to extend the base and the button. So let's bring it up to here. Let's bring this text just a little bit down, so it's 60 between icon and this text and this text. So basically now this component is updated, and I can do the same for all of these other components. So we can locate it. It's called the form, and I can jump in right here. I can do what I told you. So click right here, type in the form, because as I said, we have multiple of these. So you can hover, you have form 2 instances. And finally, we have form of 2 instances of this one. So perhaps it's a better idea, and they didn't do that in the first case, because these are main components and mobile symbols. I will call this form mobile. So let's test it out, form mobile, which is once again why it's important to test out all of your elements. So we have form and form and form. But if we created it as a form mobile from the start, then perhaps we will be able to find it. Form mobile still doesn't exist, so you have to perhaps close the XD, then open it up again, and then it will update there and show there. But that's basically it. That's how easy it is to work with sketch files. As you can see, there are clearly some bugs, and you need to find your way around those bugs. For example, you can delete these components from this file and then start over, or you can do what I did right here and then edit the components, close the XD file, open it up again, and it will show as a native component there. Then you can save it out as an XD file, and you can share it with your developers, clients, or teammates. When you're working as a UI/UX designer, obviously in every single project that you do, you need resources. Now, whether those are images, whether those are icons, mockups, whichever other resource you want to use, you have 2 choices. You can work with free resources, or you can work with paid resources. Especially beginners and designers who are just getting started in this business tend to use free resources. That's why majority of designs online look exactly the same, because all of those designers are using basically exactly the same resources as everybody else. And that's the one key problem. And the other key problem is just selection that you have online. So if I show you with the images example, but this can also be translated to icons. Here I have Unsplash open, which is basically the golden standard of these free images. And you can see that you can scroll down and find some amazing images. So let's say that, for example, for my project, I want to use this image. I can open it up. I can see who the photographer is, and I can download it right here. I will also have to leave the link to this photographer's profile, because I will have to credit them. You don't have to do this necessarily, but Unsplash says it's going to be really nicely for that photographer in particular, and for Unsplash's business as well, to leave the link as to where you found your image. So you don't have to, but it's a really nice thing to do. Pexels does this as well as all of these other websites as well. So if we go back to the image, let's say that I use this image, but for example, I want to use a photo of this girl in some other positions, or let's say that I want to use the photo where you can see this girl as a whole. Perhaps she's sitting somewhere, she's standing somewhere. So let's see if we can find a picture. So you can see that we have this one image, and this is the girl, but she doesn't have these flowers. So let's see if we can find something else. And as you can see, we are now stuck. So we cannot use that image in a series of other images. Yes, it is the same girl, but it's in different outfits. It doesn't have that those flowers on her face. It doesn't have that same exposure. Colors are not exactly the same. Outfit is not the same. So straight away we have a problem. So how designers are working around this problem? They're simply finding other models who are looking similar, with the similar exposure on those images, with similar color styles, temperatures, and so much more. But basically that is your workaround. Your designs are not going to be coherent because you're going to take image from this photographer with this exposure, this photographer with this exposure, and same story goes for the mockups. So for example, if you're using mockups which are not from the collection, like I showed you Angle collection is, then one mockup is going to have, for example, I don't know, iPhone 10, the other one is going to have iPhone 11, and then MacBook is going to be the older version, and so much more. If you're using icons, same story. Let's say that you're using outline icons in your case, and perhaps you really like the search icon from that outline pack, but for example you also need a house icon and you cannot find the same style of icons in that pack. So what you need to do is use completely different pack from somebody else who made it. That's going to be a chore for developers because icons are not made the same way. Perhaps this icon is available as an SVG, this icon is available as a PNG, and then when you send those files to the client, you also have to say to the client if you want to use these items. So for example, this image, this icon, this mockup, you have to credit all of these designers because they created it, and under certain licenses you need to do certain things, otherwise you are risking a lawsuit. And that's really the main issue with these free resources, because over my almost 20 years in this industry, I found many designers out there complaining about somebody else coming after them, either a photographer or a fellow designer or a website, because they use the resource, especially from Google Images. Because when you're using resources from Google Images, you really have no clue who created it, why they created it. At least with websites like Unsplash, for example, or icon websites like Flat Icon, for example, you at least know who created the original item, where you downloaded it, and who you can credit. But if you're using Google Images, for example, or Google Files, then you're in real trouble, because majority of times you really have no idea who created the original design or the icon or whatever. And then once your client uses it, they are risking a potential lawsuit. So just keep those things in mind. Number one, collections. So your designs are not going to look coherent because you can take one image from this person, one image from this person. So your design is going to look quite messy, especially on screens with lower latency, and especially nowadays we have 120 Hz screens. So if you're using PNG icon and SVG icon, users can really tell. And especially with these lawsuits, so just keep all of those things in mind when you're getting started, when you're using these free items from the web. So just make sure to understand, I'm not saying that you don't use these free items, but make sure when you do use them, to use them responsibly. Simply save all of these licenses, save all of these resources where you found them. You can open Google Doc, for example, and then you can list images in a list where you found them for a particular project, or icons, or whichever other resource you are using, and then you can send that list to your client and say, if you want to use these resources, so same ones I did in my design, make sure to follow these steps, to thank these people, to put the links on their websites and so on. So therefore you as a designer are covered, and then you're taking the responsibility from yourself to your clients and make them have a choice. So if they want to use these items, they can, but they now know the risks, for example, let's call it like that. Or if they want to use some other items, then you're cleared as well, because you are saving yourself from potential lawsuits and from potential issues in the future. But what happens after a certain time, when you gain some traction, when you get some more valuable clients, when you save some money, then I really truly recommend that you avoid all of these free resources, except for example for fonts, because you can use Google fonts, which are free and open source and really great. But once again, majority of designers out there are using those fonts. So make sure to understand, if your design is looking quite similar or even exactly the same as some of these other designers, there is great potential chance that you've chosen font that other designers have chosen as well, icons, images, and so much more. So once again, if you want to use premium resources, there are many different options out there, but what I truly recommend is Envato Elements. So this is how it looks like, and you're getting all of these items that you see right here under one single price. So you're getting additional 50 million photos. You have their photos here as well. You have stock video, video templates, music, sound effects, graphic templates, so print templates, websites, UI kits, infographics. We have graphics, so backgrounds, textures, patterns, icons, presentations, photos, fonts, add-ons, web templates such as site templates. You also have WordPress themes. We have 3D right here. We have WordPress, CMS, free files. We have ebooks and courses as well on Envato Tots+. So you're getting all of these different elements under one single price. You're paying the price for 1 year, and then in that 1 year you have unlimited use of these files, because on some other sites like UI8, for example, when you pay, you have a daily download limit. So you have a limit to how many items you can download in a single sitting, for example, or for a single project, while with Envato Elements you don't need that, and you can use whatever you want with Envato Elements, and you're always covered with their license. So let's take photos, for example. Let's jump in right here and let's see photos. So once again, you can go to those 2020 photos, and there are 50 million additional photos out there. So let's say that I want to use this photo. I can click on it, and when it opens, you can clearly see straight away one huge difference between premium photos and free photos. It's the size. So you can use these photos, for example, in a campaign. Let's say that your client has a campaign. They are using this exact photo for print on small surfaces, so let's say on a business card or on a flyer. On big surfaces, so let's say on a side of a building, on a website, so web pages, and let's say, for example, mobile design as well. Maybe they're using it in a print, maybe they're using it on television. So you are really truly covered, number one, by the license, and number two, with the file size, because the file size is huge and you can work with it really easily. Now, when it comes the time to download it, you can simply click right here to download. You can create a new project, and let's call it our image, or a project image, or whatever. And you can simply click create project, our image, add and download, and it's going to start downloading right away. You can download without a license, but that way you're going to get watermark all over that image like you see right here. So you can use it and send it to clients that way, but they will still have to purchase that image, so it's really a drag. You can see it's 17 megabytes in size, so it's really quite huge. And let me quickly cancel it so you're not bothered with it, because I want to show you even more. It's by this person, so 74 images. So we are looking at this girl. So you can open the profile of this person. You can also scroll down and see straight away. So here it is, and you can see how that looks like. So straight away you can see it's from this series, because lighting is the same, models are the same. So you can start scrolling and seeing where that image is. So let's say, for example, you need these images from these people. You can see that all of them are in this office. Lighting is exactly the same, sizes are huge, and you can also get all of these additional images to use from this same series. So let's say that you have About Us section on a website, for example, and you want to show your teammates. You can use these people. If you want to show your work environment, you can use these people, and it's going to look coherent because it's from the same set, created on the same day, under the same lighting, by the same photographer, uploaded on the same place, so in this case Envato Elements, and you can use them all under same license. So you don't need to download 5 images, have 5 different licenses to send to your client, and they have to credit each author of those 5 different images. They can simply use this license. They don't need to credit anybody. They just have that license in case this photographer approaches to them, and they can simply show them the license to say, take a look, my designer got this from Envato Elements, I have the license, and then they are covered. So this is really the main and key difference between free and paid resources. Once again, you can get started with free resources. Just make sure to understand when you're using them, there are some risks involved and there are some professional levels involved, like I explained. But when you're using professional licenses and you are paying for those services, then you really have no limitation, and the choice is really quite huge, as you saw right here. Let me quickly show you one more thing with the icons, for example. So if I take you back right here, and let's say, I don't know, startup icons, for example, and you can see right here it opens in different categories. So let's say that I need graphics because I need these startup icons. You can clearly separate them like so. You can also choose whichever file format you want, and you also have a bit more of these file formats supported, but they are not shown right here at the moment. So let's say that I really like these ones and I like how they look like. So I can simply visit the person who made them. It's just icon, and you can clearly see how these icons look like. And I can jump in right here and locate the icons. And you can see in the exactly same style, you have all of these different icons. So you can use them in your project, and your project is going to be much more coherent. Also, you can clearly see that they are made really precisely and really professionally. What you're also getting is color icons as well as the outline icons without any color, so you can adjust them however you need and however you want. You also get these premium looking illustrations, which is one big trend I'm seeing recently, especially over the last 1 or 2 years. People are using this plugin in Adobe XD to generate these illustrations, and every single design out there is looking exactly the same because all of these designers are using exactly the same illustrations, and they are going so far to be that lazy not to change the color of these illustrations and perhaps change the pose, perhaps change the size, composition or anything else. They're just using those icons and illustrations for free. So therefore, using Envato Elements, for example, and services like it gives you that competitive edge, because not only are you covered by these licenses, your designs are going to look fresh because you have all of these examples to choose from, and they are going to look much more professional because you're going to be taking them from designers who have created them inside of the collections. So whether those are images like I showed you or icons like I showed you with this case, your designs are going to look much more polished and much more professional if you're using premium services like Envato Elements, for example. If you don't want to get started from scratch every single time, the great way to improve your workflow and to increase your speed is using UI kits. And you can use UI kits which are free and really small, or which are paid and really big. So let me show you a quick comparison right here. So here I have a Chatty UI kit, which is the UI kit that me and my team have created a long time ago. So you have all of these elements, you have all of these components, you have all of these character style right here, so you can get started right away. So if I click right here and take some of these, so for example, let's use this, and let's say that I want to use, for example, I don't know, this top bar, copy and paste it right here. I want to use this image, copy and paste it right here. Let's say that I want to use, I don't know, this button, for example, copy and paste it right here. So you get the idea how quick this is. You just need to copy and paste elements, and you also can use components. So if I take you back one more time, for example, I can go right here and we have navbar chat, for example. I can drag and drop it right here, and I can simply position it to be right here. So you can see you can start building these elements really quickly. You can change these items, you can change the colors, you can change images, icons, and so much more. So that's why UI kits are extremely useful. You don't need to create these elements from scratch, you can simply use them. Now this was my UI kit, but you don't need to purchase anything that we created. What you can do is simply use free UI kits which are online, but once again you are running into this same issue which I mentioned previously about free and premium items. Your designs might end up looking exactly the same, but not in every case. Let me show you. So if you jump in right here, which is adobe.com/products/xd features UI kits, or simply type in Adobe XD UI kits online and go to Adobe's website, you can go right here and see you have Apple design, which is Apple certified design, and this is really extremely useful if you're creating iOS apps. So I really truly recommend that you get this. Google Material Design, same story, but for Android. AEM components, so you can do that. Microsoft UWP, if you're working for Microsoft. Platforms for Amazon, so Amazon Alexa if you're working with voice, which is the feature Adobe XD also supports. You have IBM Design, and you also have Bootstrap. So if you're working with Bootstrap, you can start there. Also, you can scroll all the way down and you can see you have sign up screen, notes app, hand-drawn wireframes. So you have this design system, presentation, component state. So you can jump in right here and download any of these UI kits to jumpstart your creative process. So once again, just think about it. Always start with free ones, no matter what you're doing, especially if you're get started. So just test out waters, see what works for you, what doesn't, and then later on you can purchase some of these UI kits and elements if you want to. But as you saw, the free choice is extremely huge, and this is just on this official Adobe website. There are third-party websites out there and designers creating all sorts of amazing stuff. So I really urge you to check it out and see, because UI kits can really save you a bunch of time and a bunch of energy working on any project, big or small.